think we'll just make a start to tonight's meeting. It's just after past. So I'm Rebecca McBain. I'm the chair for tonight's meeting. So tonight's meeting is what to expect from a land-based inspection. And we're joined by guest speakers, John Stuart and Stuart Lorimer from the Scottish Government Rural Payments Inspections Division. So as I said, I'm chair for tonight's meeting, and firstly we'll hear an introduction from John Stuart, who is a Principal Rural Officer with Rural Payments, which will then be followed by Stuart Lorimer, who has a presentation going into the main bit of tonight's meeting. So we're looking to run for roughly an hour, hoping to finish around 8:30. So yeah, if I just pass over to John Stuart to do a wee bit of an introduction.
Okay, good evening everybody. Thanks very much for inviting us along tonight. So my name is John Stuart and I'm the Principal Rural Officer for the Grampian area, which covers ARPID's Inverurie and Elgin offices. So I'd just like to say we're very happy and also very keen to be here tonight because it gives us a chance to offer some direct support to events like this. And as I say, we always take the opportunity to meet directly with our customers, especially given the current COVID situation and the fact we've not been as accessible to our customers as we would have liked to have been. So again, these events are an excellent opportunity for us to have an informal chat, let's say it. So just to let you know, there have been early discussions around potentially reopening the ARPID offices. It'll be initially for staff and then later on for customers. However, these conversations are at a very, very early stage. But we would hope to be in a position to share a wee bit more detail with yourselves over the coming months. Despite the fact we've been closed, I would still hope and indeed pray that the fact you've not been able to visit your local office doesn't mean you've not been able to contact ARPID, because obviously we have been accessible via other means, whether it be telephone, email, or I don't know if you've used our virtual chat service which is available. It's proven to be very popular. So there has been ways to get in touch with us. So I'm just hoping that you've managed to get the support that you need. We do appreciate the last year or so has been extremely challenging for all our customers. So it is vital we do make ourselves available to provide the necessary guidance and support. And that, again, that is why I'm delighted to be invited along tonight with my colleague Stuart. So tonight we are here to talk about land inspections, and my very talented colleague Stuart will skillfully talk you through exactly what is involved in the land inspection process, and after which we will be happy to answer any of the questions you might have around the land inspection process. So before I do hand over to Stuart, I just want to reiterate we are very, very happy and very keen to support any of these future webinars. As I say, they're a fantastic way to interact with you all, so please keep inviting us. So Stuart, over to you.
Right, as John says, thank you for being given the opportunity to say our piece here on land inspections. I think we're keen just to demonstrate that you know, we want these inspections to go as smooth as possible as well. We're without doubt we are not looking to catch anybody out, but these inspections, we're here to do a job, and I hope you can see what we're trying to do here. So right, what I'm going to try and cover today is why we need to visit you, what we will do and the inspection procedure, common breaches found at the land inspections, and I'll go over a wee bit about what cross compliance is and how it fits into the whole inspection procedure. So why do we need to visit you? Well, our programs of inspections is designed to help safeguard the environment, the public, crop health and animal welfare. So we're required by the Scottish Government legislation to carry out checks on each scheme that the producer claims on the single application form. We're also still bound by the European Commission legislation for the Pillar 2 schemes under agri-environment schemes and the capital schemes. This is because these contracts were issued prior to us leaving the EU, so we're still bound by their regulations for these inspections. So how do we select inspections? Well, the inspections are selected by Edinburgh. They're selected either through risk assessment or random selection. So this year, there's 3% of all applicants are selected for land-based inspections, and 0.5% of all applicants are selected for cross-compliance inspections. So we take our 0.5% of cross-compliance inspections out of our land-based inspection pool, just so that we're not having more and more inspections and more visits on farm, trying to reduce the number of inspections on farm. So for land-based inspections not selected for cross-compliance, we still have to check these visually, basically for cross-compliance requirements. So for example, this year we've got around 2,185 businesses across the whole of Scotland selected for full land-based inspections. And of that 2,185, we've got around 100 cases are also selected for cross-compliance. So they're kind of the unlucky ones, to be honest, as you'll see. So inspection periods and notice, and the aim is to carry out all our land inspections between May and December. We obviously can't run an inspection list and do a selection list until all the SAF applications are in the 15th of May. This year it was the 17th of May with the bank holiday. So for 2021, under Scotland's simplification rules, the expectation is that producers should receive a minimum of 24 hours notice prior to us turning up on an inspection. And the inspection should be carried out within 14 days of first notice. With the Pillar 2 inspections, because they're still under EU regulations, they still have to be carried out unannounced. Previously, all our land inspections had to be carried out unannounced. So this is a wee bit of a step forward, at least giving you 24 hours notice. So what do we inspect at a land-based inspection? Well, under the direct payments, we're looking at basic payment scheme, which includes the Young Farmers Scheme and the greening payments. With the Scottish Rural Development Programme, we've got the Less Favoured Area Scheme, Agri-Environment Climate Scheme, Forestry Grant Scheme, and we also still do a number of inspections which cover legacy schemes such as Rural Priorities, Farm Woodland Scheme, and the Habitat Scheme. So what do we do when we're on farm? Well, we're checking your parcel boundaries. We're measuring and assessing the ineligible areas within the parcels. We're checking the scheme management requirements have been met, confirming agricultural activity, requesting copies of documents that demonstrate compliance with the requirements. This could be seasonal let documents or EECS diaries, which you have to keep under that scheme. And then we'll also inform you of any breaches of cross-compliance requirements and any remedial action that needs to be taken. So how can you guys help when we turn up on your farm? Well, provide advice to the inspector on how best to access your land is one good example. At the end of the day, we're trying to spend as little time as possible on your holding because we don't want to cause any more problems or stress than we have to. So if there is some fields difficult to gain access to, let us know how we can. And also make the inspecting officer aware of any health and safety risks on the farm. If you've got a bull or something like that you want us to stay away from, that you're not too sure of, let us know. If you've got cattle that's potentially out a wee bit spooked easily, that's another quite a good thing to let us know, because there's nothing worse than us turning up and upsetting your cattle. I've seen it, them going through the fence and you feel awful. It's nobody's fault, it tends to be. But if we know about these things, we can make sure we can stay away. Supply the requested documents as soon as you can. If we're asking for some of the documentation at the start of the inspection, please, if you can secure that document as quick as possible, and we can get on with the inspection and get it finished. That'll be great. On-farm checks, so all claimed parcels must be visited. So all parcels which have been claimed on your SAF application form, we have to visit. We're confirming the activity in these parcels as you claimed it on the SAF. We have to take a photo to confirm the activity. That is more for our records. Ineligible areas or boundary changes is mapped using GPS equipment. So all our inspections are carried out using GPS equipment, which is within a metre accuracy. And we're measuring crop splits, greening areas claimed, and confirming that the correct management of all these areas has been carried out. So what happens after we've been? Well, following the inspections, the inspectors will be in touch to discuss the findings, and we'll make you aware of any potential issues or outstanding information. After the inspection has been processed, you may get a new map, and you'll also get detailed findings letters as well. If there's any breaches across compliance requirements, we'll give you full details of these and any remedial action that needs to be carried out. And please, if you've any queries off the back of a land inspection, please speak to us. And if there's something that you're not sure of, we can explain the full extent of and the consequences of what might be with these inspections. So moving on, how part of the inspection process is determined by the land covers that you have on your holding and the regions that have been allocated to this land. So if it's a permanent grass or woodland grazing field and it's in region 1, 2 or 3 land, a desk review is carried out using aerial photography, and then we do an on-the-spot check just to verify the activity. We do not measure every square inch of these fields. If we can see that the fences looked correct as per the maps, we go with that. The arable crops, including temporary grass, they're slightly different. We have to do a full inspection of these parcels. This is due to the arable crops and the temporary grass forming part of the arable area of the farm. Therefore, we need to know the exact arable area of the farm for the calculation for the greening calculations. So because we need 5% of the arable land needs to be put in an EFA area. So that's the reason behind that. I was going to just run through a few mapping issues that we come across. In this example here, we've got the blue line is sitting on the edge of the water. We've got a brand new fence sitting here. So when we come to this parcel, we have got to map the first stock-proof boundary. So we'd be moving the inner field there to that fence. That would be the boundary. If behind the fence the parcel's utilised and there's access, we can create a new FID for that field for the small slither of water margin. And then we could technically assess the eligibility of that parcel because there's quite a lot of gorse in it. However, if behind that fence is not being utilised at all, we'll just remove that from your map because it's not forming part of your agricultural unit. In this example here, we've got the blue line is how the field was marked when we turned up. There's internal fences there on the yellow lines. So we have to map these internal fences. If they're permanent fences, we have to map them. And something to be aware of, if the parcel is less than 0.1 hectares, it's not actually an eligible BPS parcel. Often we go there and people tell us it's a temporary fence, but if there's strainers in and there's, it's fenced with posts and wires, it tends to be that these fences are going to be up for a few years. So we have to map them. In this example here, the map was currently sitting on the old dike. The dike is not stock proof. We've got a stock proof where the red line is, fence where the red line is. So we have to move the map line to the stock proof fence. That is the case if ownership of that land is both sides of the dike is owned by the same person. If the fence is a metre away from the dike and it's different ownership, we would still be moving the map to the fence, but the area between the dike and the fence would have to become white space, unfortunately. This slide here just demonstrates how complicated it is for our inspectors under the rules that we have just now. The field is mapped to the dike. We've then got a hedge, and then the hedge is fenced off. So currently you can have an internal feature such as a hedge up to 3 meters wide, which does not have to be mapped. Therefore, we leave the fence, the map on the dike, and we've got 5 meters of BPS eligible land there. That's not a problem because the hedge is eligible. However, we've got to capture the 2 meters for the hedge as permanent grass because it's non-arable land, and then we've got to capture the 3 meters as temporary grass if that is the case and what it is. So it just shows you how complicated. So if you're ever wondering why our inspectors are taking so long, it sometimes takes a wee minute just to capture these areas, because we have to, as I explained, for the arable areas of these holdings. Eligible agricultural land. This is arable land, permanent crops and permanent pasture on which production or growing of agricultural products is undertaken, or you are maintaining the land in good agricultural environmental conditions. So if you're not growing crops, you can be doing alternative practices such as maintaining fences, access, or the waterings. If this is in Region 1 land, if it's Region 2 and 3 land, you can submit an environmental assessment for this ground. So you don't always have to be involved in production if you are keeping the ground in good agricultural environmental conditions. The land must be kept in GAEC for the full year. If non-agricultural activities such as gravel extraction or establishment of a wind farm takes place within the year, the area affected must be deducted because it's not available for the full year. Land eligibility under the basic payment scheme in ineligible non-agricultural land areas include rock and scree, roads, tracks and paths, water, dense vegetative cover, foreshore and marsh and trees. So in the example we've got here, the blue line up in the top corner was where the parcel was previously mapped, but obviously we've got non-agricultural land here, so we have to map the land to the edge of the foreshore, because there's no agricultural production going on here. A couple of examples here. We've got ineligible track. Quite clearly, there is no forage there at all. It's down to the bare hard, so it's not eligible under the scheme rules. The track on the right, fully grassed over, not a problem at all. That's eligible for BPS and LFASS. It can be grazed as well. So here we've got ineligible woodland. There's no grazing in there whatsoever. That's completely smoothed out, and it's it's trees basically. So it's not agricultural production. On the right hand side, we've got eligible woodland here. It's fine and open, and there's a good bite for cattle or sheep. So not a problem. That's eligible. Water features, as soon as a burn or a ditch becomes, the water is over 2 meters wide, it's ineligible. And it has to be mapped out, I'm afraid. But if it's less than 2 meters, it's all eligible. Impenetrable gorse, it's ineligible. And the thing you've got to remember here is if you have a look into that gorse there, it's the same with bracken. It'll be brown underneath. There'll be no grazing potential there at all. Any grass that is there is completely smoothed out by the bracken or the gorse. Therefore, it's not eligible for BPS. So your maps on our system, maps of your land on our system, the maps are for subsidy purposes only. Some people get a wee bit hung up about whether their title deeds show more land, and we're mapping out areas and things. At the end of the day, these maps are for subsidy purposes only, to show the eligible areas. We at no point are questioning your title deeds or what land you own. On the register, we have the agriculture and forestry land all mapped under our system, the land parcel information system, LFASS as we call it. So all parcels are recorded with unique numbers, and all the ineligible features are recorded within these parcels, and they could be seen on our Rural Payments and Services system. We are continually reviewing the parcel boundaries as we have to, and the ineligible areas, and we have to do this using aerial photography. This causes a lot of frustration with people because they feel that we're always changing their maps, or we're always changing the eligibility in these parcels. But if you disagree with these parcel boundaries or ineligible features, please let us know. You can fill in a land maintenance form and request that we change it, because at the end of the day, these maps are your maps, and it's about getting your claims right. So if you think what we have in our system is incorrect, please let us know, and we can reprocess it or certainly reassess it. Greening inspections, this is quite a big part of what we do. So greening was first introduced to improve environmental performance. Greening payments for agricultural practices beneficial for the climate and environment. This is paid on top of the BPS payments. So on leaving the European Union, greening requirements now only covers permanent grassland and ecological focus areas, EFAs. We no longer have the diversification requirements, which was the 2 and 3 crop rule. It has now gone. So in Scotland, the greening, the permanent grassland, the regulation insists that the ratio of permanent grassland compared to the total agricultural area claimed does not decrease by more than 5%. This is monitored at a national level and really is nothing you have to worry about, to be honest. The only requirement under the permanent grassland title is that all BPS claimants wishing to receive a greening payment must complete an inorganic fertiliser and lime plan annually. But this is only for parcels which are 100% pea grass or woodland grazing. We will request your fertiliser and manure plan, a copy of it at your land inspection. You don't have to send it in or anything, it's just as part of the land inspection. And a query that often comes up, the NVZ records are, if you're in the nitrate vulnerable zone, are suitable as an annual fertiliser plan. The only thing is you will have to record whether lime is additionally is applied, because this is not in your NVZ records, obviously. Moving on to the ecological focus areas, EFAs, there's 7 different options, all with key dates, which we are checking at inspection, basically. So we've got our EFA fallow. We've just finished getting around all the EFA fallows that were selected this year. So it has to be in place from the 15th of January to the 15th of July. The field margins have got to be from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. Your catch crops, these are basically undersown spring barley. The catch crops got to be there till the 31st of December. Your green cover has to be established by the 1st of November and until the 31st of December. So if we're out on farm in the middle of the summer and your green cover hasn't been established, obviously, because the barley crop probably hasn't been harvested, we will come back and just check that it has been planted later on in the year. It's just part of the inspection requirements. The nitrogen fixing EFA margin around has to be around an EFA nitrogen fixing crop. Therefore, it must remain until the 31st of December. The EFA hedges, as with all hedges, there's no hedge trimming from the 1st of March to the 31st of August. And the final option with EFAs is EFA agroforestry. The woodland must have been established by the 1st of January 2015. We don't get a lot of these options, to be honest, the agroforestry. Typical breaches that we find with the EFA areas is the EFA fallow cut and baled prior to the 15th of July deadline. It's far too tempting when you see the crop, a good crop of grass, and it's a weight shot. There's 1 or 2 farmers just dive in there. But to be honest, it's 5% of your arable area. It's a big risk to take if you're going to wait to go and do something like that prior to us coming out and potentially inspecting it, and you ending up with a penalty. The example on the right, that's EFA margin. The producer's been running up and down with a vehicle. So unfortunately, we can't pay on the track, but we will pay on the rest of that area. Less favoured area scheme, LFASS, we inspect for that as well at the same time. So there's three main elements. We're assessing farm activity of the claimant for a minimum of 183 days. We're assessing overcompensation, e.g. over declarations, and land abandonment. This is the main one of the LFASS and the main problems we have. So to be eligible for LFASS, you must carry stock that is under your economic responsibility. Be available and accessible. The land has to be available and accessible for use for maintaining livestock or producing a forage crop for at least 7 months in the LFASS year. And the 7 months must include the 15th of May. And this is something we will check with your lease agreement. The biggest problem with LFASS is people claiming areas that they're not actually grazing. This is becoming a big problem where there's more and more land basically being abandoned, and it's not ideal. The Agri-Environment Climate Scheme, EECS, again, inspections are required to check compliance with the scheme rules. The inspections are selected by risk analysis as part of the main land inspection selection. Because some of the options which we go to inspect have rules that are out with the main inspection period, we do spring checks and winter checks also for these claims, just to check that some of the rules haven't been broken out with, i.e. shutting out livestock from say the 1st of March or whatever. The land inspector will determine the eligible area claimed, then determine if the option has been correctly managed. And then we will probably request you to see your management diaries, confirming that the management has been followed as per the plan. Next slide is beef efficiency scheme. This is another thing that's been bolted on to the land inspections. So as part of the checks for that, the inspector will confirm the producer is indeed an active farmer. The inspector will check the producer has a valid QMS membership, and we need a copy of the certificate on file. We check that the cattle that we see on the holding are eligible breed types. And we also check that the last farm movement record matches the latest CTS or Scott EID record. It's just basically a check to see that records are being kept and are up to date. Under the Young Farmer Payment Scheme, the inspectors must request that the young farmer is available to discuss the inspection findings. A series of questions will be asked to the inspector to confirm that the young farmer is indeed involved in the day-to-day running of the farm. We've had a number of cases where you go there and either the young farmer is nowhere to be seen. He works up in Aberdeenshire, sometimes he works offshore, and basically they've just been claiming the young farmer's payment, even though the business is really running as it did previously before the young farmer was brought on. So it's just something that we do to minimise this. And if the young farmer is unavailable or unable to convince the inspector that they are the responsible person for the business, we will do a more intensive desk-based inspection and just to see what the exact score is. Moving on, so part of our inspections, and as soon as you submit a SAF application, you're signing up to meet the cross-compliance requirements. So what is cross-compliance? Well, cross-compliance is a set of rules made up of 13 statutory management requirements, known as SMRs, and 7 good agricultural environmental conditions. This is our GAECs, as we refer to them. So these relate to protection of the environment, climate change, good agricultural conditions of land, public health, plant health, and animal welfare. So as I said before, the cross-compliance inspections are selected off the back of the land-based inspections. And it's 0.5% of all applicants. So there's 7 main tasks our inspectors have got to go through for the cross-compliance inspections. You could be lucky, it depends on your enterprise. You might only have one of these reports to be filled in by the inspector, but you could have the whole shebang. There could be 7 elements to your inspection. Just depends the nature of your enterprise, as I say. So the first part is the GAEC and the core, the main SMR report. That's just a batch of questions that our inspector can answer either by when they're carrying out the inspection or by speaking to the producer at the end. The second part is food and feed law, plant protection products, dairy hygiene if it's a dairy, NVZ inspection if you are within an NVZ area, groundwater inspections, and pig ID and traceability. A cross-compliance inspection a few years ago did involve a full cattle and sheep inspection, but that no longer is the case. So if you do get a cross-compliance inspection, do not worry. We will not be wanting to see all your cattle and sheep. So as I said, the first report that we do, the main report, covers a number of different areas, as in buffer strips along watercourses, abstraction of water for irrigation, protection of groundwater, minimum soil cover and soil erosion, the maintenance of soil organic matter, the retention of landscape features, conservation of wild birds and fauna, prevention and control of transmittable spongiform encelopathies, which is to do with we ended up with BSE in the past, animal identification, registration and traceability. That's the final part. So moving on, food and feed law, SMR 4. This covers food and feed safety, hygiene and foodstuffs and feed hygiene, traceability, egg hygiene, and also the dairy hygiene actually does come under the feed and food law as well. So the type of questions we have to answer regarding your unit is, has the feed been purchased from approved sources? Are the transport vehicles and feeding equipment periodically cleaned? I.e., we don't want to see just for another better word, a shitty bucket feeding, taking cereals and putting it into a mixer wagon, things like that. We want to see responsible, clean equipment being used. Has there been any food and feed incidents? I.e., has cattle been rejected from the local from a slaughterhouse because they've been dirty? Has the producer received analysis results of food or feed tested? This could be silage analysis results. And we have a check of your food and feed storage facilities just to see that they are adhering to all the rules and regs. This slide here is an example of what we don't want to see. We've got a tractor battery that's sitting there and various other tools and equipment which quite easily contaminate the food in behind. So that is a pretty poor example of a food store. The next slide is pretty immaculate. This is what you would all love to see, but obviously that's not the case in all examples. But it's a good example of a good tidy grain store. So under SMR 4, the records must be kept for medicinal products. The animal ID should be recorded. The medicines used, the date of the treatment and the withdrawal period. Plant protection products, there should be spraying dates recorded, products used, application rate, and harvest intervals. And also we need to see the biocides, the name of the biocides and the date of the treatment. I should say that this is all stuff that's most producers are already recording for their farmer students. So it's not it's not a big ask here. The traceability of the foods that you're using, we need to see inputs and outputs of food and feed. So we request 2 inputs and 2 outputs documents. It could be invoices for feed coming in and kill sheets for animals going out. So we just need to see that you have a traceability system in place. Moving on to plant protection products, SMR 10. So we're looking at plant protection products, herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, growth regulators, and molluscicides. This does not include wetters and trace elements. They are not part of the inspection. So producers must use authorised products. They must use products in accordance with the requirements and conditions of the authorisation permit. Or any extension of use. The next slide here is an example of a breach. We have a filing cabinet stored on its side. and this is where the chemicals were being stored. The cabinet is not bunded, therefore there's leakage is not being captured. There's no warning signs, etc., on the cabinet at all. So this is clearly not a satisfactory standard. Again, here we've got chemical containers just sitting out. They're not locked away. Obviously, I think the container and the yellow container is sitting with maybe not the yellow containers. Some of the containers have got either no lids on them. So obviously, it's far from ideal. So this would be a breach also. The slide here is showing chemical containers just lying and actually disintegrating outside. Obviously not acceptable because they're not being disposed of correctly. And you're also looking at a possible GAEC 3 breach because under the protection of the groundwater, if some of this stuff is leaching into the ground. What do we do with your plant protection records, which we request a copy of when we do a cross-compliance inspection? We are checking all the plant protection products that you use for all the crops which are potentially harvested in 2021. So it's all applications that you have on the day up to the date that we are there. Is the product authorised? Is it used as per the label conditions? And our inspectors will use the pesticide website, Chemical Regulations Directorate websites, and also we liaise with the manufacturers as well to check that the chemicals that you do use are suitable for using on the crops that we're inspecting. I mentioned dairy hygiene inspections as well. They are only carried out if the farmers are producing milk or colostrum for human consumption. We have a team of designated dairy hygiene inspections all over the country who look into these. We don't have many. There's each year, as you know, there's not that many dairies left, certainly up in the northeast. NVZ, protection of water in the nitrate vulnerable zone. Obviously, this is only if you are in the NVZ, but if you hold any permanent land in the NVZ area, would require a full NVZ inspection. The farmer must comply with the conditions of the NVZ action programme. So during a land inspection, our land inspectors will ask for a copy of the RAMS map, which is the risk assessment and manures and slurry map, which they must have. We'll check and record if there's any land-based breaches. We then request a copy of the fertiliser and manure plan, which they should have if they're in the NVZ. And we need a copy of this year's and last year's just to check some of the manure applications having breached some of the limits. And then we pass on, the land inspectors will pass on all these details to, we have got NVZ inspectors who actually do the checks to make sure that none of the NMAXs have been breached. Here's a copy of a risk assessment and manures map, the RAMS map, as a good example showing the no spreading areas and also marking where the dung heaps have been during those years, the previous years. So that's quite a good map there. The next slide just shows a couple of breaches under SMR1. Here in the MVZ, we've got someone has been applying slurry onto snow, which is a big no-no. We don't get a lot of these cases, but what we do tend to find is often it's a neighbourly dispute or something. Someone is phoning Grassland the other one, and obviously we have to act, and because there is a chance of leaching with applying slurry to snow. Again, here we've got a breach. Producers have been spreading muck far too close to waterings. They should not be applying within 10 metres of the top of the bank. If this field is in an MVZ, it's a breach of SMR1 because that's your MVZ. If the guy's not in an MVZ, it's actually still a breach because it's a breach of GAEC 1, which I'll discuss in a wee minute. The final two parts of the cross-compliance inspection is groundwater. Confirm if the producer has a licence for the disposal of dangerous substances, i.e. sheep dip. check the producer is complying with the licence if he does hold one. And the final part is pig ID and traceability. We have inspectors who will carry out these inspections. It tends not to be the land inspector themselves, but we'll have arranged for someone to come back, check the movement records, holding is registered with EFA, and we'll do a visible check of the pigs, confirming that the welfare and the identification is in place. Right, moving on to the GAEC. All the options that we have to adhere to. So GAEC 1 is buffer strips along water courses. So the aim is to protect the water from pollution. That is the sole point of it. So farmers must not apply organic manure to any land which is situated within 10 metres of any surface water or 50 metres of any well, borehole, etc. And they must not locate field heaps within 10 metres of surface water or 50 metres again of wells or boreholes. In this example here, we've got a GAEC 1 breach. Producer has applied slurry within 10 metres of a watercourse. And he hasn't left the 10-metre buffer strip. Same again here, this quite clearly been applying muck. A fair chance some of this dung has ended up in the water itself. So this would be classified as a breach. Here we've got an example of good practice, good strong buffer zone, not much chance of anything ended up, whether it's chemical sprays or nitrogen or muck. It's just a good example of what can be done with buffer strips. Another one which catches an awful lot of people out, unfortunately, and is one of the big breaches we get, is farmers must not cultivate within 2 metres of the top of a bank. Totally understandable. Producers want to plough as hard T as they can because they don't want to have a heap of weeds growing at the top of the bank. But unfortunately, the rules stipulate that you cannot plough within 2 metres, trying to stop soil ending up in the water. The example here is clearly a breach of GAEC 1. The guy has ploughed hard T here, and there's just there's nothing to argue here. Again, if we're saying that the top of the bank is probably where your fence is, there is no 2 metres there. So from the start of the watercourse here, there would be a breach all the way back. And that's what we would measure on the day. The example we've got here was something that came from SEPA. On the left-hand side, this was the year that they discovered this breach. The producer had ploughed hard T. A year later, they went back, and the producer had actually left these 2 metres. So everyone was happy. Here is another breach. The producer here has been spraying far too close to the watercourse. Yeah, there's maybe a bit of drift taking place here as well, but he certainly shouldn't have left. There should have been a bigger buffer between where he's been spraying. When we talk about the top of the bank, I always like to think of it being where you would put a fence. You're not going to put a fence halfway down a bank. You tend not to anyway. And the examples here, the top of the bank is classified in the top picture as the normal flood level. Same again on the bottom. I think it's a good example of where the water would flood to. That would be the top of the bank in that example. Breaches, how do we work these breaches? The example I've got here is of a producer cultivating within 2 metres at the top of a bank. So how we work this through our breaches programme is that the breach has taken place on farm. There's no actual effect on anything off farm. We look at it and decide whether it's within a metre of the top of the bank, whether they've been ploughing directly into the watercourse. This would be permanent soil damage. But if it's within a metre or classified within 1 or 2 metres of the top of the bank, this then determines the severity of the breach. An example we've got here, it was over 250 metres and up to 500 metres, so it's classified as a medium breach, and it's rectifiable because there was no actual soil ending up in the watercourse. This is then fed into the penalty matrix to work out what the penalty would be. So it's classified as negligence. It's on farm, as discussed, severity was medium, it's rectifiable, and it comes out with a 3% penalty. Under GAEC 5 and soil erosion, livestock must limit significant erosion of banks of watercourses and watering points. This is another one we have quite a few breaches. But when I mention the word breach under cross compliance, I must stipulate that a lot of our breaches end up being warning letters. They don't always end up being financial penalties. So it's more of an awareness, and if the breach isn't too bad, it comes down to just pure awareness and trying to rectify the situation. In this example, what do we class as significant erosion? It's where banks have become unstable, large areas and lengths of banks with exposed soil and little or no vegetation. Non-significant erosion is where natural bank profile is virtually intact, but there's just low intensity poaching. The example we've got here, the bank shape has changed and the exposed soil, the soil is moving down the burn, the watercourse there. So this would be a breach. But if this was the only hotspot on the farm, this would be a warning letter. Again, the same here, the water's reasonably clear. There's a fair bit of poaching, possibly some of this soil gnats ending in the water. But if this is the only point on the farm, again, this would just be classified as a warning letter. And the expectation would be certainly to move these feed rings back, and actually SEPA would be encouraging you to somehow try and fence off these watercourses, or certainly reducing the stock numbers. Again, here we've got a kind of hotspot where the cattle are actually using it for watering, basically trampling in the bank. Again, this would be a warning letter. Same again, the bank is being pushed to its limit here, but we would be looking for this to be fenced off and protecting that bank. It is very difficult when some of these watering points have been man-made by ourselves, forced under grant schemes, but this is no longer acceptable. SEPA would like these to be closed off, and this would be again a warning letter in the first instance. Same again here. This one is particularly bad. There's quite a lot of damage to the banks. Fence is completely trumped in, so this would probably end up in a 3% penalty for the producer. And the ultimate, this was a place, I think, in Ayrshire. There has been substantial damage here. The producer has basically been feeding the cattle on an island and has caused considerable damage. And this ended up with a 5% penalty. It's going to take a fair bit for that to recover. GAEC 7, retention of landscape features. So farmers must not remove or destroy dry stain or flagstone dikes, turf or stone-faced banks, walls, hedges or ponds. That is what GAEC 7 is all about. So in this example here, we've got a dike which is probably we would give permission to remove. It's pretty non-existent, to be honest. But and if someone wrote in and asked us if we could remove it, we would inspect it and decide whether we thought it was It was basically run down altogether and couldn't be repaired. Yeah, this is the exact same dike at the other end. There's not much wrong with it, and it's visible from the road, which is something we take into account when we do these assessments, whether these landscape features are prominent. So this particular bit of dike, we probably wouldn't give the permission to remove in the end of the day. This is an example of hedgerow removal. If we come across this, we'd be checking to see if a producer had been given approval to remove this. It would be highly unlikely we would be given approval. I would just say that if someone does ask for approval to remove a hedge or a dike, and we refuse the approval and they go on ahead and remove it, that would be classified as intentional. Therefore, that would be a considerably higher penalty because you have been told not to remove that dike, basically. So, retention of landscape features under GAEC 7, the farmer must not cultivate land within 2 meters of the centre line of a hedge. This is another one that causes quite a few problems with our land inspections. Again, through nobody's fault really, producers are trying to reduce the weed burden on their holding. Often they forget about these hedges and protecting them, but under the rules, we should not be ploughing within 2 meters of the centre line of these hedges, unless we're cultivating to establish a new hedge, basically. So in this example here, the one on the left, a nice 2 meter strip left, and the example on the right is ploughed hard tea. So that would be a breach of the regulations. Here we've got a hedge, possibly a ditch. Where should we be? The 2 meter GAEC strip start from at the top. Where should it be protected from? Obviously from the top of the bank, 2 meters back in, and I think that's probably what's happening here. There has been grass maybe sown here, and the crop is there. Another example of a breach which we'll be calculating. So this is cultivating land within 2 meters of the centre of a hedge. The farmer has cultivated land within 2 meters of the centre of this hedge. It's got an on-farm effect. The severity is calculated again because it's between 1 meter and 2 meters from the centre line of the hedge, or is it within 1 meter of the centre line? So that determines how the penalty is basically calculated. So if we're saying on farm, it's low, over 150 meters, 800 meters, it's rectifiable, i.e. won't do it again. We put that through the penalty matrix, and it comes out as negligent, on farm, low, and rectifiable. And this would end up with a 1% penalty. So that is all I was going to say. It's a bit of a whirlwind through the inspection procedure. It's quite a complicated procedure, but I hope that's given you a insight into what we do.
So Stuart, I was just going to nip back in there, Stuart, if that's okay. So I realise that was an awful lot of information for you all to take in, and I appreciate that. And I don't want you to think that this was some kind of memory test, and you were expected to take this all in, and that would be great. What I would say is the majority of the stuff that Stuart's just taken you through, the rules and regulations, etc., is available online. So I would urge you to go and have a look at it online if you do have any questions. That said, I do realise that some of the guidance around some of our procedures online is quite bulky, and at times it can be quite overwhelming to find the exact part of the guidance that you're looking for. So again, I would urge you at any instance like that to please contact your area office, because we are here to help you. We are here to offer you some support, and we are here to give you the correct information, so there is no misinformation, so you're fully aware of what is expected. So if you do get selected for any type of inspection and you do have any concerns, again, please contact your local area office before the inspection if you want, or on the day of the inspection. Again, one of our officials will be delighted to talk you through the process, why they're coming to visit you, what they're going to be looking at, etc., etc., and hopefully answer a lot of your questions before they arrive. The main point is, there's probably a lot of mistrust about the work that we do, and we're probably not the first people knocking on your doors, but we are, we are doing it for the best interest. We want to make sure the information we gather is accurate and the payments we subsequently make are correct. So that's all I wanted to say. I'm happy to open up to questions, Rebecca, if anybody's got any.
Yeah, I'll just do put one or two quick questions to you before conclude tonight's meeting. So the first one, how do you assess if stock have been on a field for LFASS, for claiming LFASS?
Basically, we would be checking to see if it's been grazed. It's using a bit of P&T skills. It's quite obvious if a parcel has been grazed or not. And if we are not convinced that it has been grazed, or we will actually request that they demonstrate. We can request that they demonstrate that it has been grazed, and we'll come back if we are a wee bit sceptical that it hasn't been grazed at all. Because there is some parcels that are only grazed at certain times of the year, but it's about the availability for LFASS purposes.
Okay. And you sort of mentioned that you can either get selected for an inspection through like sort of a risk assessment or random selection. Is there certain things that like affect your risk? Like, is it previous breaches that affect that, or what sort of comes into
under risk, it could be breaches, the value of claims, big changes in the areas that you're claiming from one year to the next. These could always be seen as potentially risky things. It's the same with also coming into that is time since your last inspection as well. That all gets added into the risk, and it all works in a point system. And contrary to public's opinion, sometimes we do not just go selecting people that we drive past or anything like that. It is all worked out on risk, and then we do have the random selection as well, which is only fair. So people can be really unlucky and get inspected under risk one year and randomly the next year, which is not particularly nice for the producer or for us, especially if everything was fine the year before, because we don't want to have to bother the producer twice, basically. So
perfect. And then just one last one to sort of finish off. If you've got seasonal land and that's on your basic payment claim, your IAX claim, who's responsible for the MVZ records if you're in the MVZ area? Is that the landowner or the person that's claiming?
It is the landowner's responsibility to record the NVZ, have the NVZ records. It's not the seasonal tenant.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, so that's great. Thank you very much for your time, Stuart and John. That was extremely insightful, and I'm sure everybody will agree that you've answered a lot of queries. Just a note for anybody that's sort of missed the start of the meeting, that this it is recorded, and so it'll be posted online, and you can watch it back if you want. And then just a wee note as well that the next meeting is there's a meeting next Thursday, and it's got guest speaker Doug Avery, which will also be really exciting. So that's it for tonight's meeting, and thank you all again for attending. Good night.